Welcome to Inside Games, the only channel brave enough to watch the Dragon Age Veilguard gameplay, but not play the Dragon Age Veilguard gameplay. Only Lawrence did.
Didn't even play it. No, so yeah, I did see a demo of it at Summer Game, Play Days, but it's pretty much the exact same thing as the video they released. I had a very short amount of time to ask questions, and some other people in the room did, so I got some context. The demo that I saw opens a little bit before the video starts. There's actually like a bar brawl that happens, and then you walk out into the city, and then you're off to the races. But yes, interesting reveal. The series certainly has a varied history. I think there's been a lot of different kinds of games called Dragon Age. And now we're in a post-Baldur's Gate 3 world, which kind of changes some things. I don't know. This is a very flashy, very like big budget, very 2010 kind of AAA game, it seems. So when I think about this game in particular, divorced of my feelings of the series in the past, it's almost like I have to separate it. How do I critique it as a Hollywood big budget thing? And then how do I critique it as a game? And there doesn't seem to be a lot of overlap, but I got a lot of thoughts. Bruce, You've done a lot of research about it, like you were saying. What do you think about Dragon Age Veilguard? Yeah,
so I'm excited for this type of game sort of right off the bat, because I like these games because I like to control my companions and have them, run off and do stuff while I just stand there and watch. I just love playing those games. But I also have no history with Dragon Age. I played Dragon Age Origins, I want to say 9-10 hours or whatever, and enjoyed it. And it was fun, but I didn't beat it or anything. I didn't ever play Dragon Age Inquisition. So I am, like Lawrence just said, I don't need to divorce my thoughts at all because I have no preconceptions as to what Dragon Age is. So when I was reading about it, everyone was mad because they were like, oh, this isn't like Origins. This isn't like Inquisition. And I don't care. So if the game is fun, the game is fun to me. The gameplay looks fun, maybe a little too simple, but it looked fun. And like Lawrence said, it totally is a big blockbuster $250 million game, it seems, that hopefully will be fun. I'm very doubtful about the combat. I'm like kind of wishy-washy. It looks like it could be like, oh, that parts of that looked really cool, and the other parts is like, I don't know. So, but Lawrence got to see it and actually got to like listen to the developers talk about it. So I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, sure. I have more of a history with Dragon Age, I guess, in that I adored Origins. I'm that kind of nerd. The Origins to me is essentially the last BioWare game, BioWare proper, and they kind of became more of a blockbuster hit factory after that. But it, especially when it came out, there were just not games being made like that at the time. PC, top-down, mouse-heavy, interface-heavy RPGs that had like good writing and required the player to kind of sit there and read sometimes, and choices that mattered, and uncomfortable decisions with no clear answer. Like, it was pretty cool. And then Dragon Age 2 was the opposite of all of that, which is bizarre because there are people who really like that game too. I was unenthused, and that was probably peak EA burning out their franchise territory too. So it was tragic, honestly, to see BioWare make this great original, expansive CRPG in a time when no one else was doing that, to have it immediately get demoted into being a brawler with like basically no story decisions, one empty city, like gross looking environments. Dragon Age 2 was a letdown in a lot of ways. The writers still tried, I'll say that. The words and the like storyline were okay, but everything else was rough. And Inquisition, yeah, I flaked out of pretty fast because I just didn't get any spark out of it. It felt like it felt overstuffed in the wrong ways, and also kind of chasing trends instead of setting them. And now we're here with a game that seems like it's also kind of chasing trends. So to me, it's like, I don't expect Origins out of this. I gave up on that a long time ago. And like I said, now that we have Baldur's Gate 3, I don't need Dragon Age to be that anymore. Also, the Pathfinder games are very good. So now it's like, kind of like I think like you're doing, Bruce, I'm trying to approach this on its own merits. And when I do that, I think I come to a lot of the same conclusions, which is that I'm a little, the combat looks like Spider-Man, which is weird to say for Dragon Age. Yeah. Especially like the ranged indicators and the parries that are very obviously visually signposted.
Well, we should say just also that's just the rogue combat. Now, obviously, there's warrior and mage, which, by the way, I'm going to immediately pick mage. Like, I'm never going rogue at all, because these games, just to your point, sorry to interrupt, but just to your point, I don't want to play these games for the rogue combat. That's not what I would rather play Spider-Man. So I want to play the magic stuff. I want to do magic combinations of elementals with your companions and do all that other stuff. Like, I don't care about running up and slicing with a sword. So
yeah, and that's another difference. The demo that I saw, they did pick warrior. So, slightly different play styles. They said that every class will have a different resource generation mechanic. In Diablo, like, mana is different than other resources with other classes. So you theoretically have to adapt your play style. That's cool, I guess. But it's certainly nowhere near the headspace of Dragon Age Origins, where there were encounters where I had to pause and think, like, hard, where you do, like, every ability matters. I remember early on in the game fighting a golem in, like, a magical tower. And this is like 10 years on, and I remember the encounter because that's how cool it was. I had to really, like, study the character's abilities and use them intelligently, and, like, have my paladin taunt and kite while my archer took the high ground and got a damage bonus and was actually, like, able to clear it after, like, pretty meticulously taking turns and stuff. I don't expect that Veilguard will have that. I don't think it's even trying for that. So again, it's like, it's just not that. But what is it? It does seem like it's a pretty arcadey beat 'em up. It seems like they're going for mass markets with the action. Your character has, like, superpowers. They kind of snark a little bit, or at least I guess it's up to you to choose the tone of your dialogue. So yeah, it does feel like a big, dumb, we want this thing to be everything to everybody kind of game. But even inside of that, though, there are things to like, I think. And it's okay to like games that are trying to be liked, too. So Bruce, since you have so much experience, I think, watching premium television, how do you feel about the production values of the, like, Hollywood aspects? The writing, the characters, the pacing, the cinematography, things like that.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that I watched the 20-minute gameplay that everybody got to see, I did like the writing, and I was immediately engaged with the story. I don't know the characters at all. I don't know Solus. I don't know Varric. I don't know Harding. I don't know any of them. But I immediately understood what was going on, other than the fact that they're trying to close the veil, or at least repair the veil. That's why it's called the Veilguard. And you don't know why. Like, I assumed Solus had made a turn. He used to be apparently good, and now he's bad. So I was engaged by the writing. But I was, again, this isn't me being like, oh my gosh, it's Sopranos level. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, it was just fun. And I was like, okay, cool, fun. One thing I was really interested to see, Lawrence, and maybe you have the answer, but maybe you don't, is the choices that your character can make. Do those matter? They didn't look like they mattered, but I'm really curious.
Yeah, you definitely hit on something there. It is the prologue. It's too early to expect, story-altering decisions if they exist. But yeah, the spread you get is pretty much you deciding the tone of your responses to things. And then you get the one line hit from an NPC that approves or disapproves, and then you just roll right through. I kind of expect that's what the whole game will be, because it's really expensive in terms of development manpower to make genuine forking paths. And when I think about that, it really starts to converge on Mass Effect. That's kind of what we're looking at right here. It's got, like, crowd-pleasing gameplay. It's got radial menus where you can give your people commands, but you can't take control of them. You can't move them around. The combat is probably going to be a lot less technical. And I think philosophically, it's just kind of an audience jack-off game. It's there to just rub you off. To me, and I think to the Hollywood aspects of it, some of the camera angles are a little masturbatory. That camera punches in, and it's like, hold for applause because this person's back. Again, it's the beginning of the game. But I get kind of sensitive to that stuff. The sort of, like, D&D, Joss Whedon-y snark. Yeah, there's kind of a layer of that, but sometimes it's well done. For me specifically, there were a couple of good lines that kind of stuck with me of like, well, that's actually decent writing. When Varric called what's his name? I'm already blanking. The elf man.
Rook?
Solus.
Oh, Solus. Okay.
Yeah, not the main character. When Varric said, like, oh, I call him Chuckles, I was like, oh god, that is the Joss Whedonist joke I've ever heard. But then later on, when they meet, he's like, "Hey, Chuckles, how's it going?"
Yeah.
So it's like
they're friends. They're friends.
It was a payoff. It was done in a different context. All right, that was pretty good. The line that Solus says, "People are always dying. It's what they do,"
which was a valid line. That sounded like a Thanos
line.
Sounded like a Thanos line. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? All right, those are levels of competency inside of that sort of big budget, stupid, crowd pleasing AAA thing that hasn't really landed in a while. I don't remember any cool line. Well, there were a couple cool lines in Spider-Man 2, probably the closest, but yeah, that had me interested. Not for any of the reasons I like Dragon Age Origins, but coming back to this, I was like, oh, okay, the thing you're going for, you're actually kind of hitting, even though that's not the thing that I associated with this franchise.
That makes sense. I want to talk about the player sexual romance options, because a lot of people were talking about this, and after Baldur's Gate 3 was the horniest video game in the world, now everybody wants to romance everyone all the time. And the developers kept calling your companions not player sexual, meaning they're not all going to adjust to you and what your choices are. They are instead pansexual, which means they can romance each other, they can romance your player, they have their own hopes and dreams, et cetera, et cetera. And I assume you probably didn't see much about this, but I don't know if the developers spoke to you at all about this besides what I'm reading.
Not really, no. There was there was basically some passive reinforcement that if you would go against the will or the nature of your party members, that so like in the original Origins, party members would leave or they would fight you. Those consequences kind of softened over time. So there was some soft reinforcement that yes, like situations will get dire, but it was that kind of phrasing. The developers did a lot of that. Nothing specific, nothing like obligating to actual gameplay function. Just like, oh yeah, baby, it's gonna be Dragon Age. So I'm like, okay, I'll take that with a grain of salt. I'm not surprised about the player sexual thing, because of course, this game is here to entertain you, and that's it. It has nothing to say. And so expecting them to like do the cyberpunk thing and have characters that have actual defined sexualities that don't bend around the player, yeah, that's not what this game's here to do. So it doesn't surprise me. It also doesn't surprise me that they're kind of taking a cop-out answer. It just so happens that every single romanceable NPC is pansexual, because that's the only way you can excuse it, apart from just straight up telling the player that these characters are here to jerk you off. So, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's the Mass Effect thing. After a while, it kind of got weird, because the game is really horny, but also it's that kind of CW level horny, where it's the most sanitized version of horny. I'm not sure if...
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think we'll get anything fun out of Dragon Age, but I think that part of the game's not for me. That's the visual novel, like teen lady Twilight sort of experience that's, I like my big-titted anime broads. So we'll see if any of those show up in Dragon Age.
It's really funny because in Baldur's Gate 3, it sounds great because you're like, oh my gosh, you can have sex with a bear and all this other stuff. But then it takes 40 hours to get to having sex with a bear. And I'm sure that's awesome that it, pays off for you when you played 40 hours of Baldur's Gate to have sex with a bear. But when they say, oh, they're pansexual, everybody will have sex with everybody, I hope it happens within the first 2 hours. Like, I just want to knock it out. I want to get jerked off by everybody all at the same time within the first 3 hours of the game, and then at that point, whatever.
Yeah,
like then we'll go play the game. I'm not saying that the merits of Baldur's Gate 3 are bad. It's just more of like, that's just what I want to do in this sort of big budget blow 'em up game.
Yeah, visual novels figured that out a long time ago. I'll tell you that. Because yes, usually there is a quick bang at the beginning of porn games, and yes, it's weird to me that those things are not put in the game. I think it's like they want to maintain this pointless air of class. It has to be at the end of the relationship, because this isn't about fucking. It's about forming a relationship with this character that only has one defining feature and is a very obvious visual fetish for somebody. Yeah, it's silly. To some degree, honestly, those combating overtones, just the American puritanism that still runs in those games, combined with the horniness they're trying to introduce, I find that really, really fun. That was one of my favorite parts about Mass Effect, ironically. So I don't know if we're going to do the same thing here. The game seemed much more at ease with itself than something like Mass Effect in terms of its characters and its story, but I do think it will be very tactically safe. I don't think we're going to get any bear fucking, unfortunately, but I don't know.
Yeah,
now that
sounds
Baldur's Gate 3 has shown that you can get away with these things. It'll be sad if they just like kind of find another large animal, you know, instead of something much more freaky and interesting.
What else do you want to talk about? Just
let's see. I have some just random observations, some notes that I took down. I did get to see the character creator, and that's important because there is a bulge/glute slider.
Oh, okay.
Like that. It was nice to see bulge and then a little like bar. Good stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, the setting itself was cool looking, but also I think pretty communicated about the tone of the setting. It's a cyberpunk town inside of a dark fantasy game. I mean, again, rule of cool, fine, whatever. They're not neon signs, they're magic. All right.
Yeah.
And but it looks cool. There's like a giant floating ring castle with spotlights and stuff. I just think, again, it communicates that Dragon Age is not really about anything defined. It's just a pop culture melting pot. Whatever they can stuff in there to make it sellable, they will. So it's operating on AAA rules now. But I guess to kind of cycle back to that idea, I think my grand thought is that this really does look like a modern Mass Effect, except it's not sci-fi. But nobody's making those anymore because, ironically, those are really dated now. You got things like Alex, I guess, some quirky games out of Central Europe that kind of scratch that itch a little bit. But yeah, there's nothing quite like the aroma of lots and lots of American dollars on fire, which is kind of what this game looks like. And it looks good. And it's got moments that are well done. So I'm kind of down with it just because, ironically, Dragon Age Origins filled a niche that wasn't being filled at the time. Now that niche is kind of filled by other games. So here comes Veilguard to be the big, dumb, stupid early 2010s AAA game that's trying to be the ultimate experience that's accessible by everybody, and it's horny and it's got music and it's got tender moments, but also you can, I don't know, kick chickens or something. So It is kind of fun to have a game like that again, because I think now games like this are going to get really rare.
Yeah, because they cost way too much money to make. And they really, since I guess games are sort of, dividing up into their own niches now, I don't know that this is going to appeal to everybody. Like, it's like, oh, well, Dragon Age Veilguard is the only major release this month. It's like, that doesn't really happen anymore. So now, at this point, this thing's going to have to sell a ton to make its money back. And maybe it will. If the action and story has the right amount of stupid momentum, because there's this fun little magic when it comes to these sorts of things, that if it's just this momentum of like one dumb thing happens after another, but in the right pace, then it really does feel fun. And then you can really get into it. And then the combat's just sort of like neither here nor there. It's like, well, you did your little encounters. You move on to the next major encounter. Hopefully there will be some memorable action encounters with like, a mini boss or something like that maybe is a little harder than normal, rather than just plowing right through it. One thing they did say was apparently there's going to be an option to make your player invincible. So then that way, if you just want to play the game for the story, you can, which I thought was okay. Maybe they're confident in their story. And also to your point about the cyberpunk city, Dragon Age Origins felt very dark.
Yes,
especially the beginning of that game was just so dark. And they talk about contrast for Veilguard. They were saying like not all of it's going to be dark. Like we're gonna, even though this gameplay they showed was dark, they're gonna ideally, they're gonna say like, no, there's this all lit up in the daytime. There are lots of cool screenshots that they posted of bright forests and lush green bushes, all mounted around monuments and things like that. So that looks way better than just wandering around a cave for the first 3 hours like in Origins.
Yeah. I think I mean darkness not only visually describes it, but I think tonally as well can kind of describe the shifting of the series. To me, the greatest comparison is in Dragon Age Origins. If you got into combat, you didn't feel like a superhero. You couldn't do backflips and stuff, at least not at the beginning. And you're pretty brittle too. So you would get through this combat where you just barely scrape through. People are at 1 HP. And then your characters would be covered in blood. Like after combats, they'd be gasping and be like, holy fuck, how did we live? And that made the combat mechanically match the tone, which then carried over into the story aspects. But here, everyone's like pristine and clean, wearing impossible anime clothing. I did see there were like little rain drips that hit them, but they just look like they're on a soundstage. You know, it looks like an MCU movie, as opposed to like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. So that's what we're dealing with. I think adjust your expectations accordingly, but it's possible, I think, to do that and still have a good time, provided all the things you said are true, Bruce, which is that it doesn't lose itself in the sauce somewhere. If it just... Because, yeah, the beginning is paced really well. They kind of explain the stakes on the go. They introduce the characters as you're, like, rolling through. I thought that was really well done. So I don't know how they're going to hold that up over a game. Or even have moments of downtime that are interesting, the player camp moments where you can talk to your party. Hopefully it'll be good. Lots riding on the writing. But what we've seen is competent. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah. Did they give you a release date? Or I would assume not a retail price, but maybe even a release date for this?
Does it not have one? Oh,
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. Let's see here. I know we can look this up, but it was more of like, if you had the information, I was going to ask you. And
no, it just says 2024.
Oh, so this year.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Depending on how many environments they made. I guess it's just distinct stages instead of being an open world thing. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? One thing we should talk about. You can edit that out, and
sure.
I'll ask you this. One thing I read in the articles was that Dragon Age Veilguard is not open world. It is instead like open area. So some of the missions themselves you can wander around in, but it is not a fully open world game, and that worried me. I don't know how you felt about that. Yeah.
Oh, that was the layout of Origins, and I thought that was fine. It's like a world map. Okay. You just click into a zone, and then if that area can have a lot of NPCs and open areas to explore, I think Inquisition's open world was entirely pointless and didn't really help the game. It was just there because people wouldn't buy games that weren't open world. So I'm in support of it on a couple levels. One, I don't think it's necessary. Two, I would like to believe that games that aren't open world can still sell. Because I think, there's a lot of game design that wraps around being unnecessarily in an open world. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the environment looked cool enough. I didn't want for an open world seeing a cool cyberpunky castle floating in the sky. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Bruce? Do you think that makes it feel too small?
I don't. That was I just hope that, again, it's sort of that makes me rely on the story more, because then the open world is like, well, usually if you can get distracted in an open world and sort of bounce off different side quests while you're exploring. But if this is an open world and we're on rails, then that story better be banging. Like that has to be like I said, the momentum has to be there. Otherwise, I'm just going to get bored of it and be like, okay, I got to walk to the next dude. Here we go. You know?
Yeah. And if, video game writing sometimes struggles to hit basic beats of competence, much less get above that to keep you really enthralled. So, but you know what? Games are getting better and better, and the talent involved is getting better and better. So I can hope. I hope.
I'm pretty much done.
All right.
However you want to wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up. Yeah. Thanks EA for inviting me to come see the demo. It looked cool. It was nice to see the bulge slider. And I guess Dragon Age: The Veilguard's coming out in 2024. Can't wait to have sex with everything.